One can see from this parable why the Saviour attracted crowds and kept them. He was never boring. Have you noticed the elements of fine psychology in this parable? Not a word is wasted. It's actually, if it weren't so serious, quite comical. I thank thee, I am not like an Western, or even this publican either. But can we find ourselves in there? Is it not true that we actually are engaged in this game pretty well all the time? We do not become taller by standing on the shoulders of other people, nor do we become better by pulling them down. Pride, remember, is a participation in what got Lucifer, the brightest of creatures, into irreversible trouble. He owned what he was given. Our Lady, now the brightest of creatures, had gifts which she didn't in any way deny, but immediately returned to the one who had given them without owning anything. He has worked, yes, great things in me. There was a saint who muttered one day, centuries ago, "Je me méfie de l'humilité qui se montre." I distrust humility that shows itself. I think you know the scenario I mean. Great protestations of humility. But you, sometime later, come back to that same person and start in any way criticizing him or her, you'll find a very different scenario deep down. And we? The proof of what is deep down is in that pudding of our being criticized. If we lived our truth, we just wouldn't care. It would apply also to anything that comes at us nowadays virtually on a screen or a phone. So much energy over this planet is expended in maintaining our glory at all costs. What liberation we would gain if we lived our truth. I don't care! I am judged not by you, who one day will be judged, but by one alone. And spending time and intimacy with him, I see also what he did. He didn't care. It was the experts of his time who brought him to Calvary. It was the official authorities. And he reminded Pilate, you would have no authority if it were not given to him by someone else. And he got the message. Humility is a fugitive virtue. I remember being warned about this actually way back in formation in France by a holy novice master. He was a good man. Il y en a, he said, there are some qui sont fiers d'être humbles, who are proud of being humble. And he showed us a little cartoon. It was the picture of some holy monk looking a bit worse for wear on a desert island with one sole palm tree behind him. And in it appeared a smart-looking guy who was somebody of great importance. The only thing is that he couldn't quite conceal two tiny horns protruding from his headgear. And he had in his hand a great big World Cup. And he had this message for this ancient desert father. On behalf of HQ, I have the honor of presenting you with the first prize in resisting temptation. There was, strangely enough, back in student days, a text which I've never forgotten. It was in Latin, and it was one of the ancient classics. It was the Somnum Scipionis, the Dream of Scipio, a very profound text. It was a purported dream that Scipio had had, and it was basically, whatever it was made of, full of gems of wisdom, as it were, tips from the other side to this young man. And one has stayed with me to this day. In translation, it would go thus: as regards what men will say of thee, let them think of it, for they will say it anyway. Translate. Is it not true that tendentially the truth actually over time will out, for better or for worse? And the less we bother about it, usually the better. With regard to forms of pride, there are different degrees. Vainglory is an initial step. It's almost natural and sometimes almost healthy. Within limits, we take pride in our work. That applies to any work, cleaning or doing a doctorate. We do our bit well, and we're glad to have it done well. But if competition and envy enters in, it's quite different. And there we have the green-eyed monster. Beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster that mocks the one it feeds on. And it's ever present in human dynamics, even actually in the consecrated life. If one person is elected superior, look at the reactions of some of the others who wanted to be superiors. I actually know of one or two cases where a superior elected himself by the one vote that made all the difference. In life, we can participate in the deep sin of pride, which brought Lucifer down, by other degrees which get ever more serious. Look at history, and actually even modern history. Look at all the great men of history. Some actually did well and really helped their country. Their motives were good. I think of the way that Winston Churchill saved England in a dark hour, the darkest hour. That drive, victory, that charism. But there are others, and they may still be on this planet, who seem to have this dream of evermore. It's always been there. Remember the troops of Alexander the Great? They went as far eventually as the Indus and said, thus far and no further. But look even now at the planet. How many can't stop? They want more. And that can be more authority, fame, power, money, or actually, coming close to us, beauty, success in sport and theatre and television, music, attention-seeking, basically. But do you think that those who have great quantities of authority by fear are in peace or in joy? Scratch a bit. What do you find? The more authority there is, the more fear and insecurity there is also. Do you think they have joy at heart? Compare that with the hidden young girl who goes into a convent just to love Jesus. No one will ever know her or see her. But I tell you, I know many of them, they know what joy is about and what freedom is about. They're looking in the right place. Humility, on the contrary, is linked with silence. The noisy soul is a proud soul and reigns over others. He knows a lot, and he will not listen. He comes out of his conversation with the same volume of knowledge as he entered it. The humble soul actually knows quite a lot, because he's always in input mode. I want to, for a second, dwell on the first reading, the gifts of the Spirit, because also it's linked. Our truth is our state, where we have put ourselves and where Providence has put us on this planet. If we are content in our humility and our truth, we are free. The person who has a great ambition will never be at peace until he's got there, and he'll mess up his life in desire. So, the gifts of the Spirit. I've noticed actually how our God is very fair. He gives some people great gifts of intelligence, but he gives some who might be apparently less spectacular other gifts of humanity, perhaps of art, of goodness and wit, kindness. And I've seen this in many a hidden, for instance, travelling woman who keep everything together with no glory and against the odds, just doing her bit. But specifically, the gifts of the Spirit are interesting. We all have a specific gift, and I remember actually over the years how I've seen some of them who were actually very spectacular and very authentic. In France, in the mid-80s, I was involved with the charismatic renewal, and there were powerful things going on. Gifts of knowledge, gifts of healing, gifts of prophecy. And it was, when you had many thousands praying together in a basilica, powerful stuff. Miracle after miracle, coup sur coup, things which you can't fake. Knowledge, healing happening before our eyes. The leg of one man growing to the same size as the other, on the spot, before us. And on it would go. Multiplication of food. And these strange gifts of knowledge. There's somebody at the back of the basilica right now who 10 years ago murdered somebody. He was never found out. The Lord is pleading with him to come back to him, for he is mercy. The following day we heard, anonymously, the person had come out of the woodwork, been to confession, and it had all been healed. And on it would go! But coming back to Ireland, I've seen it too over the years. I think immediately of 3 cases. All 3 actually still alive. One, Breda Laffey. I was a novice at the time. She was praying over me and she saw things. She saw things which at that time were just impossible. She saw me going up altar steps and heard these words, "In tuibo ad altare Dei." And I knew what that meant, and it was at that time unthinkable. Another, a little lassie actually, a child of the age of about 8, we knew that she had gifts. She was so innocent that she thought that every child had the same. You could hear the voice of Jesus. But she heard the voice of Jesus and sometimes of Mary, and it was obviously the truth. There's no way that a child could fake that, and the answers were obviously the real thing. We were able to ask a few things, and when we asked about what was going to happen to me, a few things came out straight away. I was to be in Ireland, I was to be a priest, and I was to be near the East Coast. Another time, I was taken to Eddie Stone's. You know Eddie, the gift of knowledge. I think I've told you before, I'll say it again to those who don't know. My friend went to see him, and he wanted to have her at this preaching, or rather healing town that would be in the area in Nova. She was working at the time in the golf course as a cook, and these last orders were coming in. And she wanted to get away to hear Eddie. Oh, more orders, what's this? Lemon meringue pie. Lemon pie. So she whizzed through these lemon meringue pies and dispatched these supersonic lemon meringue pies and whizzed off. Eddie was holding forth. There's someone there. There's someone there at the back of the church has pancreatic cancer. That's going to be healed now. There's somebody there with a broken leg. That's going to be healed. Yeah, yes. And I can see coming up here lemon meringue pies. She paused. And then Eddie, she went over and Eddie, those lemon meringue pies, they were free. What does that mean? The Lord's telling you, He hasn't forgotten you. So, Eddie was praying over me years ago, and he could see things in the future. It hit me today, I'll tell you why in a sec. It all came back to me. There was a lot of uncertainty, but he saw this. He could see me, just like Jesus, sitting and teaching, and he saw this bit very clearly, with great clarity and great emphasis. A huge number being taught. And that was before the time of modern technology with regard to YouTube. This day I noticed there were 1,000 subscribers, and they're coming back, these messages from all over the place. Russia, South Africa, India, Romania, Russia, I mentioned. All these places of English language, or anyway culture that can get through to you. It's amazing. The Word of God, the power of the Spirit. Where do I want to end? You, my friends, must take seriously your God. He's alive, and His power has never changed. Take Him seriously and disappear.